So once again we are meeting today, and today's caption line, as you see, thus was taken God's plunge into the night. So this is from Book 2, Canto 2, The Kingdom of Subtle Matter. And today we'll have two sections in our session. First, the dwelling or discussion as it is, and the second part about an experience, again a very beautiful one, of Amanda. So first let us read the passage. Thus taken was God's plunge into the night. This fallen world became a nurse of souls, inhabited by concealed divinity. A being woke and lived in the meaningless void. A worldwide nations strove towards life and thought. A consciousness plucked out from mindlessly. All here is driven by an insentient will, thus fallen, inconscient, frustrate, dense, inert, sunk into inanimate and torpid drowse. Earth lay a drudge of sleep, forced to create by a subconscious yearning memory, left from a happiness dead before she was born, an alien wonder on her senseless breast. So, as we see the world as it seems to our eyes, that the world is a mechanical accident, a fortuitous accident. What is going to happen today, we don't have any clue, and neither there is any goal, a concrete goal to be seen, for which we strive day in and day out. But in fact, it is something else of which we are generally not aware, at least for the vast majority of people living on earth. In fact, it was by a process of densification, increasing densification, that the creative or the divine consciousness that involve itself into the utter self-oblivion. Self-oblivion at the lowest end of its involutionary plunge. Earlier also we have discussed that the divine plunges himself down to very matter. So it is the creative or the divine consciousness that takes a plunge downward and becomes a state which is totally ignorant, which is nescience. And this state of nescience or inconscience, out of it the world emerges. That means what was earlier a free will, a free self-aware, all-aware consciousness or will, becomes, taking the plunge here, becomes totally nascent. But out of this state of nescience in conscience, the world, material world emerges. And in this world, there are souls born for what? To grow, to evolve further to their full stature. That is, it is kind of a return journey. The first journey is involution of the divine consciousness in its plunge, and the resultant journey being the evolution. If nothing is involved, how can something evolve? So that is the basic principle of everything. So the divine consciousness takes a plunge downward and becomes totally self-oblivious of its own vastness, infinity, consciousness, and becomes inconscient. But gradually, because it is involved and because the seed is there, again from that involvement, he emerges in multitudinous lives. That is why we see a world being born gradually, and all the creatures first take form, means have the vitality, that means the vital life begins, then the mental, and gradually progresses that way. But despite all the appearances to the contrary, that it seems to be a mechanical one, devoid of consciousness, gradually this material life, all the movements in this material world gradually go forward and grow in its consciousness, because behind it there is something, it is it can be called because there is the divine is there, so it has to come out. The divine consciousness has to come out, flowering in life, in mind, and gradually the world progresses to its goal, which has already been set out by the divine will. Because what has come down here, taking a plunge, is not something which is totally inert, but in it there is the all-powerful divine consciousness together with its will to execute. And out of this, what we call a non-being, in our Shastras, it is called asat, non-being. That is, nothing is there. Out of nothingness emerges a being, means sat. In other words, existence. Out of non-existence, non-being, came existence, sat. Out of an inert pervading nescience has emerged a movement which is all encompassing and all progressive. So all this has been possible because the divinity which is concealed in the womb of things, everything gradually becomes active and keeps on working its will, the inherent will, that is the divine will. So, what seems to the normal eye to be a mechanical accident, a fortuitous one, that is this world, having no goal at all, in truth, is the other way around. There is a will, and that will, the divine will, executes it, the working, in such a meticulous way, but because we are not aware about the working behind the surface, we do not see things happening, or we do not have any clue what is going to what is happening now, or what is going to happen tomorrow, or what even is the goal towards which we are moving. So that's it for the first part. And secondly, again, there's a very beautiful story recounted by Amalda again, which also is related to Savitri. That's why I just want to share with you. I'll just read it out. He has written to somebody, I have promised to tell you the inner story during the last phase of my recent illness. He was suffering from a fever, a bout of fever. He says, I had a hacking cough, and along with it, a daily rise in temperature during the afternoon and evening, generally 100 and once 101. This did not deter me from my usual typing work at home and my daily wheelchair visit to the Samadhi from 4:30 to 5:30 p.m. As you know probably that he was always on a wheelchair going to Samadhi in the evening, during which hour the cough was surprisingly quiet, except for a slight outburst on rare occasions. Every third day I used to drop in at our ashram dispensary, which is on my way to the Samadhi. There, Dr. Datta would solicitously examine my chest and lungs, put the thermometer in my mouth, and give me the needed treatment for whatever bacterial complication accompanied the virus infection he had diagnosed. Probably he was referring to Dilip Datta. We have no remedy against viruses. They come and go at their own sweet will. The illness went on for nearly 4 weeks. The repeating fever made the body rather uneasy, and there seemed no definite end to it. One afternoon, I suddenly had the feeling that what I needed was mountain air to set me right. But how was I to get that refreshing atmosphere which, as I remembered, had once got rid of a troublesome fever? I was in Pune and had planned to go to the high plateau of Panchgani. Halfway up in the bus, I felt the changed air sweep the fever out, and I was perfectly well thenceforward. After my fracture accident, I was in no state to catch any bus winding anywhere upward. Besides, I disliked the idea of leaving Pondicherry. What was then to be done? Then a voice within commanded, within inverted commas, read Savitri. Immediately I took hold of the volume, concentrated a little, and opened it at random. I read 2 pages at a stretch, audibly, getting the full impact of the rhythm. At the end, I realized that something had gradually stood back from the feverish Amal. The fever had not gone, but the real I was free from it. Then I recalled Sri Aurobindo writing that mountains were a symbol of the universal consciousness. It also struck me that what he had called the overhead planes, planes of consciousness above the mind level, would surely be inner heights in a spiritual wideness, from where Sri Aurobindo drew the inspiration of his yogic poetry, especially of his epic Savitri. This immense creation was meant to have again and again the mantric vibration of the top overhead plane, the overmind, which had been the source of the supreme moments in the Rig Veda, the Upanishads, and the Gita. The breath of inspiration blowing through Savitri was indeed the archetypal mountain air. Every morning, day after day, I listened to my lips spelling out Savitri. For a couple of days, while I stood inwardly aloof, the fever continued, though at a lower pitch. Then it vanished completely, and I inhaled the atmosphere of a super Panchgani all the time. That means he need not go to Panchgani of Pune again, which he had the experience of earlier. I informed Dr. Datta that I was quite well, but I did not tell him how the virus infection had left me, and the cough too had started subsiding. I was afraid he might think me too imaginative. If he happens to read this detailed account, I am certain he will not shake his head. He is too much of a yogi to do it, and too trustful of, within inverted commas, respected elders to doubt them. So it's dated back to 25th June 1992. So all these experiences of the stalwarts like Amalda, Amal Kiran, these are only inspirations for us to sincerely, as much as possible, with an open mind, quiet mind, with an aspiration, intense, but not very, what it is called, impatient, not impatient. So that kind of an aspiration, having that kind of an aspiration, if we continue to read Savitri every now and then, of course, not too many pages at a stretch, as he also suggests, Amanda suggests that 3 or 4 pages suffices. But with a true aspiration, then it can make miracles all the time. And we don't have to go too far. In fact, some of us have those experiences. Only thing is to persevere and go on, relying absolutely on Mother and Sri Aurobindo's guidance, protection, and Savitri being there, it becomes so easier for us. So that's it for the day. Jai Ma.